Maya woke up to the smell of coffee and something cooking in the kitchen. For a moment, she forgot where she was and felt panic rise in her chest. But then she remembered the events of the night before, and she realized she was still on Ryan's couch, wrapped in the warm blankets he had given her. She had slept for almost 12 hours straight. It was the first time in weeks that she had fallen into deep, peaceful sleep without waking up every hour to check the locks or listen for footsteps. Her body felt like it was finally starting to recover from the constant stress and fear she had been carrying. Ryan appeared in the doorway between the kitchen and living room holding a cup of coffee. "Good morning," he said with a gentle smile. "How did you sleep?" "Like I hadn't slept in years," Maya answered honestly, sitting up and stretching. "What time is it?" "Almost noon. I figured you needed the rest. I called in sick to work today, so we could figure some things out." Maya felt a wave of guilt wash over her. "You didn't have to do that. I don't want to mess up your life just because mine is falling apart. It's just one day," Ryan said, waving away her concern. "And anyway, I've been thinking about this situation all morning. I want to help you do this right so you don't have to keep running." Over breakfast, which Ryan had prepared while she slept, they had the kind of conversation Maya never thought she would be able to have with anyone. Ryan asked careful questions about her situation, and Maya found herself telling him things she had never told anyone else. She explained how the relationship had started normally but gradually became controlling, how her ex-boyfriend had slowly cut her off from her friends and family, how he had convinced her to quit her job and depend on him financially, how she had found evidence that he was involved with people who did dangerous and illegal things. "The worst part," Maya said, stirring her coffee absently, "is that I know how it sounds. I know people must think, why didn't she leave sooner? Why didn't she see the warning signs? But when you're in it, it happens so slowly that you don't realize what's happening until you're trapped." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "I've had students who came from difficult home situations. One thing I learned is that it's never as simple as it looks from the outside. People do what they have to do to survive." After breakfast, Ryan showed Maya the research he had done the night before. He had found several organizations that specialized in helping people escape dangerous domestic situations. Some offered temporary housing, others provided legal assistance, and some helped with job placement and counseling. "This place looks promising," he said, pointing to information about a local crisis center. "They have experience with situations involving criminal activity, and they have secure housing where your ex won't be able to find you." Maya read through the information, feeling both hopeful and nervous. What if they can't help? What if there's no space available or they don't believe my story? "Then we'll try the next option," Ryan said firmly, "and the next one after that. We'll keep trying until we find something that works." The first phone call was terrifying for Maya, but Ryan sat beside her on the couch, offering quiet support. The woman who answered the phone at the crisis center was kind and professional, and she didn't ask Maya to justify or explain her situation in ways that made her feel ashamed. "We have an opening in our secure housing program," the woman said. "Can you come in this afternoon for an intake appointment?" Maya looked at Ryan, who nodded encouragingly. "Yes," she said into the phone, "I can be there." That afternoon, Ryan drove Maya to the crisis center. It was located in a nondescript building downtown, with security measures that weren't obvious but were clearly present. Maya felt nervous as they walked to the entrance, but Ryan's presence beside her made her feel braver. The intake process took several hours. Maya had to tell her story again, this time to a counselor who specialized in domestic violence cases. She had to provide details about the threats she had received and the evidence she had seen of illegal activities. "You did the right thing by leaving when you did," the counselor told her. "And you're doing the right thing now by getting help instead of trying to handle this alone." The crisis center could provide Maya with a safe place to stay, legal advocacy, counseling services, and help finding employment. They also had connections with law enforcement agencies that specialized in cases involving organized criminal activity. This is going to be a process, the counselor explained. Rebuilding your life after something like this doesn't happen overnight. But you have options now, and you have people who are trained to help you through this. As they left the crisis center, that evening, Maya felt like she was seeing the world differently than she had in months. The future, which had seemed hopeless just 24 hours earlier, now had possibilities. "I can't believe this is really happening," she said to Ryan as they sat in his car outside the building. "Yesterday I was sleeping on park benches, and today I have a safe place to live and people who are going to help me start over." "You had the courage to ask for help," Ryan replied. "That's the hardest part." 6 months later, Maya had her own small apartment in a different part of town. She was working at a nonprofit organization that helped other women in situations similar to what she had experienced. She was taking classes toward her GED, with Ryan tutoring her in English when his schedule allowed. Her ex-boyfriend had been arrested along with several of his associates, based partly on information Maya had provided to law enforcement. She still had moments of fear and anxiety, but they were becoming less frequent as time passed. Maya and Ryan had developed an unexpected friendship. She would stop by his house sometimes on weekends, bringing dinner to share or helping him grade papers. On holidays, when she didn't have anywhere else to go, he would invite her to join him and his sister's family for dinner. They both understood that their lives had been changed by that rainy night when a desperate young woman knocked on a stranger's door. Maya had learned that there were still people in the world who would choose kindness over self-protection. Ryan had learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply open your door when someone needs help. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't answered the door that night?" Maya asked him once. "No," Ryan said without hesitation. "Some things are just meant to happen. You needed help, and I was in a position to give it. It's as simple as that." But Maya knew it wasn't really that simple. Ryan had made a choice to see her as a human being worthy of help, rather than as a problem to be avoided. That choice had saved her life in more ways than one, and she would never forget the man who taught her that sometimes strangers can become the family you never knew you needed. 2 weeks had passed since David found the 3 alien babies, and his life had become a careful balancing act between soldier and secret guardian. Every morning, he would complete his regular duties at the base, then find excuses to patrol near the abandoned bunker where his small charges waited for him. The babies had grown stronger during this time. What started as weak chirping had developed into more complex sounds. David began to think of them as songs rather than just noise. Each little one had their own unique pattern of sounds, almost like they were trying to tell him different things. The smallest one, who David privately called Little Light, because of the way its body pattern sparkled, had become especially attached to him. Whenever he entered the bunker, Little Light would rush over and wrap all 4 arms around his leg. The feeling of trust and affection that flowed through David's mind during these moments was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The middle-sized baby had a curious nature. David started thinking of this one as Explorer because it was constantly examining everything in the bunker. Explorer would pick up David's equipment, study it carefully, then make questioning sounds while looking at him. It was clear the little alien was trying to understand how human technology worked. The largest of the 3 seemed to be the protector of the group. When David first approached each day, this one would position itself between him and the other 2 until it was sure everything was safe. David called this one Guardian, recognizing a kindred spirit in the protective instincts. Learning to care for them had been challenging. Through trial and error, David discovered they needed certain minerals to stay healthy. Fortunately, the planet's surface was rich in these materials. He would collect small crystal fragments during his patrols and bring them back to the bunker. The babies would examine each crystal carefully, selecting only certain types to eat. They consumed them by placing the crystals against their chest, where the minerals would somehow be absorbed into their body. Watching this process still amazed David, even after seeing it dozens of times. Communication was getting easier, too. David had started to recognize patterns in their sounds. A quick, high chirp meant they were happy. Long, low hums meant they were tired or sad. Sharp, rapid clicking sounds meant they sensed danger nearby. That last discovery had saved David's life twice already. The first time he was approaching the bunker during his regular evening visit, when all three babies suddenly started making urgent clicking sounds. David immediately took cover behind some rocks. Moments later, a patrol of enemy aliens walked right past his hiding spot. If he had continued walking, they would have spotted him for sure. The second time was even more dramatic. During a routine mission with his squad, Little Light's warning saved his entire unit. David had been carrying a small communication device that let him hear the babies even when he was miles away. When they started clicking frantically, he ordered his men to take cover just seconds before enemy fire erupted from their planned route. "How did you know they were there, Sarge?" Private Johnson asked after they had safely retreated. "Lucky guess," David replied. But inside he was marveling at the connection he was developing with the three little aliens. The hardest part of his new life was avoiding suspicion from his commanding officer, Colonel Hayes. The colonel had always been strict, but lately he seemed to be watching David more carefully. "Rodriguez, you've been spending a lot of time on solo patrols," Colonel Hayes mentioned one morning during briefing. "Just being thorough, sir, making sure we don't miss any enemy activity." And these extended patrols always seem to be in the same general area." David's heart raced, but he kept his voice steady. "That sector has a lot of hiding places, sir. Requires careful checking." Colonel Hayes studied him for a long moment. "See that you don't get too comfortable with routine, Sergeant. Predictable patterns get soldiers eliminated." After that conversation, David had to be even more careful. He varied his routes to the bunker, sometimes taking hours longer to make sure he wasn't followed. He created false patrol reports, claiming to investigate areas he had never visited. The lies made him uncomfortable, but protecting the babies was more important than following regulations. The emotional bond with his small charges was growing stronger every day. When Little Light had gotten sick from eating the wrong type of crystal, David had stayed awake for 2 nights straight, trying everything he could think of to help. The relief he felt when the little one finally recovered was more intense than anything he had experienced since losing his family in the war. Explorer had started bringing him gifts, small, perfectly shaped crystals that the baby would present with proud chirping sounds. David always accepted these offerings with appropriate ceremony, understanding that this was how Explorer showed affection. Guardian had begun including David in the protective duties. When the 3 babies settled down to rest, Guardian would position itself near the bunker entrance while making soft sounds toward David. It took him a while to realize the little alien was asking him to watch the other direction, working as a team to keep everyone safe. But as the babies grew stronger and more active, hiding them became increasingly difficult. They were naturally curious and wanted to explore beyond the bunker. Explorer especially would try to follow David when he left, making sad sounds that broke his heart. The communication device David used to monitor them also picked up more concerning sounds. Military chatter indicated that both human and alien forces were planning major operations in this sector. The quiet area where David had been hiding the babies was about to become a battlefield. Time was running out. During his latest visit, all 3 babies had clustered around him, their body patterns pulsing in unison. Even without understanding their language, David could sense their growing anxiety. They knew something was wrong. Little Light pressed against his chest, and for a moment, David felt a flood of images in his mind. He saw flashes of memory from the baby's perspective. Their original home before the bombing. Adult aliens who must have been their family. The terror of being trapped under the rubble. But mixed with these painful memories were new ones. David feeding them crystals. David staying with them during thunderstorms. David's gentle touch when they were scared or hurt. In that moment, David realized the truth. These three small beings didn't just trust him. They loved him. And despite everything he had been taught about the enemy, he loved them too. The war that had taken his family had also given him a new one. But keeping this family safe was going to require choices that would change everything. As David left the bunker that night, he could hear distant explosions growing closer. The battle for this sector would begin soon, and when it did, nowhere would be safe for three small aliens whose only protector was a human soldier with an impossible secret. Zara had been searching for 3 months. Every day since her children disappeared, she felt like a part of her soul was missing. In her species, mothers shared a mental connection with their young ones. When that connection suddenly went silent. During the human attack on their settlement, Zara thought her babies were gone forever. But something deep inside her refused to believe it. Call it mother's instinct or desperate hope. But Zara knew her children were still alive somewhere on this broken planet. She was not just any alien mother. Zara held the rank of High Commander in the Zephyrian fleet. Her crystalline armor bore the marks of dozens of battles against the humans. She had personally led raids that destroyed 3 human colonies. In the eyes of her enemies, she was a monster. Yet right now, she was simply a mother who would do anything to find her lost babies. Using advanced stealth technology, Zara had been moving across the planet for weeks, following the faintest traces of her children's mental signatures. The trail was so weak, she sometimes wondered if she was imagining it. But tonight, as she crept through the ruins near the human military base, the signal was stronger than it had been in months. Her children were close. Very close. Zara moved like a shadow between the crystal formations, her 4 arms carrying weapons that could cut through human armor like paper. If she found her babies hurt or worse, there would be consequences. The humans would pay for every moment of suffering her young ones had endured. The mental trail led her to an abandoned human bunker. Zara paused outside, listening carefully. She could hear soft sounds from inside, familiar sounds that made her crystalline heart race with hope and fear. Those were her baby's voices. But there was something else. A deeper voice, speaking in the crude human language. One of the enemy soldiers was inside with her children. Rage filled Zara's mind. The humans had captured her babies and were probably torturing them for information. Even though the little ones knew nothing about military secrets, humans were known for their cruelty. She had seen the evidence in other captured settlements. Zara activated her weapon's energy field and prepared to storm the bunker. Whatever human was inside would regret the day they decided to harm Zephyrian children. But as she approached the entrance, she heard something that stopped her cold. Laughter. Her babies were laughing. Zara had not heard that sound since before, the attack on their home. For months, she had dreamed of hearing their joy again. But why would captured children be laughing with their enemy captor? Moving more carefully now, Zara peered through a crack in the bunker wall. What she saw inside challenged everything she thought she knew about humans. A human soldier was sitting on the floor, surrounded by her 3 children. Little Kess, her youngest, was curled up in the human's lap like he belonged there. Dara, her curious middle child, was showing the soldier small crystals while making excited chirping sounds. And Vex, her protective oldest, was positioned nearby but clearly relaxed and happy. The human was speaking to them in gentle tones, even though he obviously couldn't understand their responses. When little Kess made hungry sounds, the soldier carefully selected crystals from a small pile and offered them. When Dara pointed at a piece of human equipment, the soldier picked it up and demonstrated how it worked. This was not torture. This was not imprisonment. This was care. Zara watched in stunned silence as the human soldier interacted with her children with the patience and gentleness of a natural parent. When Vex started making protective clicking sounds at something outside, the human immediately became alert, reaching for his weapon while simultaneously moving to shield the babies with his body. Her children trusted this human completely. More than that, they loved him. The realization hit Zara like a physical blow. This enemy soldier had not captured her children. He had saved them. For months, while she had been searching desperately across the planet, this human had been keeping her babies safe, fed, and happy. According to everything Zara knew about humans, this should have been impossible. They were supposed to be mindless killers who showed no mercy to alien life. Yet here was proof that at least one human possessed the same protective instincts toward young ones that drove her own species. Zara deactivated her weapon. She needed to understand what was happening here before she made any decisions. Moving to the bunker entrance, Zara made the soft calling sound that Zephyrian mothers use to announce their presence to their children. The response was immediate and overwhelming. All three babies began chirping and singing at once, their body patterns flashing in pure joy. Little Kes scrambled out of the human's lap and rushed toward the entrance. Dara and Vex followed, their excitement filling the bunker with musical sounds. But the human soldier's reaction surprised Zara most of all. Instead of reaching for his weapon or calling for backup, he simply sat very still and watched her children's reunion with sad eyes, as if he knew this moment meant his time with them was over and he was already missing them. When Zara stepped fully into the bunker, the human slowly raised his hands to show he was not armed. He said something in his language, gesturing toward the babies. Even though Zara couldn't understand the words, the meaning was clear. He was trying to tell her that her children were safe and unharmed. Little Kes ran back and forth between his mother and the human, chittering excitedly as if trying to explain everything that had happened. Dara presented Zara with one of the crystal gifts she had been collecting, while Vex took up a protective position where he could watch both adults. The baby's joy at seeing their mother was obvious, but so was their attachment to the human soldier. They were not choosing between the two. In their young minds, both adults were part of their family now. Zara knelt down and gathered her children, close, feeling their familiar mental presence filling the empty spaces in her mind. The relief was so intense she almost collapsed. Her babies were alive, healthy, and had been loved during their separation from her. Looking up at the human soldier, Zara made a decision that would have shocked every member of her military command. Instead of seeing an enemy, she saw the being who had given her children the most precious gift possible. He had given them safety when they needed it most. In the ancient language of her people, Zara spoke a single word that carried the weight of tradition and honor. "HFY mate." The human couldn't understand the word, but her children did. They began singing in harmonious tones, their body patterns pulsing in rhythm. Little Kes crawled into the human's lap again, while Dara began offering crystals to both adults equally. Zara had just declared this human soldier to be family. In Zephyrian culture, a HFY mate was someone who had proven themselves worthy of joining a family unit through acts of protection and sacrifice. It was the highest honor her species could give to an outsider. But as the implications of her declaration sank in, Zara realized she had just made both their lives incredibly complicated. This human was now bound to her family by sacred law, but he was also her people's enemy. And judging by his military uniform, she was his enemy too. They stared at each other across the bunker, two warriors from opposing sides, united by their shared love for three small aliens who had no understanding of the impossible situation they had created. The war between their species would not end because of this moment. But for Zara and David, everything had just changed forever. The next few days were the strangest of David's life. Having Zara in the bunker changed everything. She was clearly a high-ranking alien warrior, but she was also a mother who watched him interact with her children with growing respect and curiosity. Communication was the biggest challenge. Zara could make the same musical sounds as her babies, but she also tried speaking in her own complex language. David had no idea what most of it meant, but somehow they were starting to understand each other through gestures, expressions, and the children's help. Little Kes had become their translator. The smallest baby would chirp something to his mother, then make different sounds to David, as if explaining what each adult had said. Dara brought crystals to both of them equally, showing that she saw them as a team. Vex positioned himself where he could watch the bunker entrance, protecting his expanded family. Zara fascinated David in ways he hadn't expected. She moved with deadly grace, and her 4 arms could handle complex tasks that amazed him. When she checked her children for injuries, her touch was incredibly gentle. When she examined David's equipment, her intelligence was obvious even without shared language. But she was also clearly studying him. David caught her watching as he fed the babies, played with them, and tucked them in for sleep. Sometimes her body patterns would pulse in ways that seemed thoughtful or surprised. On the 3rd day, Zara did something that shocked David completely. She began teaching him her language. She started with simple words, pointing to objects and speaking slowly. "Kestai," she said, touching little Kes gently. Then she pointed to David and made questioning sounds. Understanding flooded through David's mind. She was telling him the baby's real name and asking what he called the little one. "I called him Little Light," David said slowly, then tried to copy the sounds she had made. "Kestai." Zara's body patterns brightened, and she made approving sounds. Over the next few hours, she taught him the names of all 3 children and basic words for food, safety, and family. But their peaceful learning session was interrupted by the sound David had been dreading for weeks. Military vehicles were approaching the area. Zara immediately went into combat mode, her body patterns shifting to threatening colors as she reached for weapons David hadn't even noticed she was carrying. The children sensed the danger and huddled together, making worried sounds. "No," David said quickly, gesturing for Zara to stay hidden. "Let me handle this." He stepped outside the bunker just as Colonel Hayes arrived with a full squad of soldiers. David's heart sank when he saw the serious expressions on their faces. "Sergeant Rodriguez," Colonel Hayes said in a cold voice. "We need to talk." "Of course, sir. What can I help you with?" "We've been monitoring communications in this sector. Our equipment picked up some unusual signals coming from this area. Signals that match alien technology." David kept his face neutral, but inside he was panicking. "I haven't seen any alien activity here, sir." "Is that so?" Colonel Hayes stepped closer. "Because our surveillance shows you've been spending a lot of time in this exact location, and our sensors are detecting alien life signs right now." Before David could respond, the bunker door burst open. Zara emerged in full combat mode, her weapons charged and her body patterns flashing dangerous warnings. She had understood enough of the conversation to know her family was threatened. The human soldiers immediately raised their weapons, but David stepped between them and Zara. "Wait!" he shouted. "Don't shoot!" "Stand down, Sergeant," Colonel Hayes ordered. "That's a high-value enemy target." "She's not our enemy," David replied, knowing his military career was over but not caring anymore. "She's a mother protecting her children." "Children?" Colonel Hayes looked confused. "What children?" As if summoned by the conversation, the 3 babies appeared in the bunker doorway. They saw the armed humans pointing weapons at their mother and David, and immediately began making distressed sounds. The effect on the soldiers was immediate. These weren't the terrifying alien warriors they had been fighting. These were obviously young ones, scared and looking for protection. "Dear God," whispered Private Johnson. "They're just kids." Colonel Hayes stared at the scene in shock. His trained soldier was protecting an enemy warrior who was protecting 3 alien children, who were looking to the human soldier for safety. "Sergeant Rodriguez," Colonel Hayes said slowly, "what exactly is going on here?" David made a decision that would change everything. "Sir, 3 weeks ago I found these children trapped under rubble. They were dying. I couldn't just leave them." "So you've been harboring enemy aliens?" "I've been protecting children," David corrected firmly. Zara, understanding the tension even without knowing the exact words, began speaking in her musical language. She gestured to David, then to her, children, then back to David. Her meaning was clear even to the humans who couldn't understand her words. She was explaining how David had saved her babies. Little Kes broke away from his siblings and ran to David, wrapping his small arms around the soldier's leg. Dara followed, offering a crystal to Colonel Hayes as if trying to make peace. Vex stayed between everyone, ready to protect his whole family. The sight of alien children treating a human soldier like their father, while their mother stood ready to fight alongside him, was beyond anything the military had prepared these men for. "This is impossible," Colonel Hayes muttered. "Aliens don't form attachments to humans. Our intelligence says they're incapable of emotional bonds with other species." "Your intelligence is wrong," David said quietly. "They're not so different from us." Zara seemed to understand the conversation was about her and her children. She deactivated her weapons and began speaking in calm tones, occasionally pointing to David or her babies. "What is she saying?" Colonel Hayes asked. David listened carefully to the musical sounds, picking out the few words Zara had taught him. "I think she's trying to explain that I'm part of her family now." "Part of her family?" "She called me something in her language, Thex High Mate. I think it means I'm accepted as one of them." Colonel Hayes looked around at his soldiers, all of whom were staring at this unprecedented situation. Enemy aliens and human soldiers standing together, united by 3 small children who belonged to both worlds. "Sergeant Rodriguez," Colonel Hayes said finally, "you are under arrest for treason, harboring enemy combatants, and violating direct orders." As the soldiers moved to detain David, Zara understood what was happening. Her body patterns flashed, angry colors, and she stepped forward protectively. The children began crying, sensing that their human father was in danger. And in that moment, David realized that saving 3 small aliens had created something nobody had expected. It had created a family that crossed the lines of species and war. But families protect each other, no matter what the cost. The military prison was cold and empty, but David barely noticed. All he could think about was what might be happening to Zara and the children. According to the guards, the alien mother had been scheduled for immediate questioning, while the babies were being held for study. The thought of his family being separated and frightened made David feel sick with worry. But on his 3rd day in detention, Private Johnson appeared at his cell with surprising news. "Sarge, you need to see this," Johnson whispered, slipping David a small data tablet. "Something weird is happening with the alien prisoners." David looked at the security footage on the screen. Zara was in a holding cell, but she wasn't acting like a normal prisoner. Instead of trying to escape or showing signs of defeat, she was doing something completely unexpected. She was teaching the human guards her language. The video showed Zara pointing to objects and speaking slowly, just like she had done with David. Some of the younger guards were actually trying to repeat her words. When they got the pronunciation right, Zara's body patterns would brighten with approval. "Why would she do that?" Johnson asked. David understood immediately. "She's trying to communicate. She wants to tell them something important." The footage switched to another room where the 3 babies were being kept. David's heart broke seeing them huddled together, their body patterns dim with sadness. But then something amazing happened. Dr. Patricia Wells, the base's chief scientist, entered the room carrying food crystals. The babies immediately perked up, recognizing the proper nutrition. As Dr. Wells fed them, she began talking gently, the same way David had done. Little Kes responded by making soft sounds back to her. Dara offered her a small crystal as a gift. Even Protective Vex seemed to relax slightly around the kind human scientist. "The doctor has been spending 12 hours a day with them," Johnson explained. She says they're incredibly intelligent, more like human children than anyone expected. Over the next week, David watched through secret video feeds as something remarkable happened. The children began teaching Dr. Wells the same way their mother was teaching the guards. Soon, basic communication was happening between humans and aliens throughout the detention facility. But the real breakthrough came when Zara managed to convey a crucial piece of information to Dr. Wells. David learned about it when Colonel Hayes visited his cell with a grim expression. "Rodriguez, that alien mother of yours has been making some serious accusations," the colonel said. "What kind of accusations?" "She claims this war was started by lies. She's been drawing pictures, showing us documents. She says prove that someone has been lying to both sides." David felt a spark of hope. "What kind of lies?" Colonel Hayes pulled out a tablet showing Zara's crude but clear drawings. They depicted human weapons being sold to aliens and alien technology being sold to humans. In the center of each drawing was a symbol that looked like a corporate logo. "She's saying that weapons dealers from Earth have been playing both sides," Colonel Hayes continued. "Selling advanced weapons to her people while telling us that aliens were planning to attack, then selling our technology to them while telling them we were preparing for war." "That would explain a lot," David said quietly. "Like how the aliens always seem to know our tactics, and how they had weapons that could penetrate our armor. The problem is we have no way to verify her claims, but Dr. Wells has been working with the children, and they've been drawing similar pictures. 3 different alien minds all telling the same story." David's heart raced. "What are you going to do?" "That depends on you, Sergeant. Dr. Wells believes the only way to get more information is to reunite the family. The children are getting sick from stress, and the mother is becoming increasingly agitated. But if we release you to work with them—" "I'll do whatever it takes," David said immediately. 2 hours later, David was escorted to a new facility, where his alien family was waiting. The reunion was emotional and overwhelming. The children rushed to him with joyful sounds, while Zara's body patterns brightened with relief. But there was work to do. Over the following days, David served as a bridge between human and alien understanding. With his help, Zara was able to share detailed information about the weapons dealers who had manipulated both species into war. The evidence was damning. Corporate records hidden in alien technology matched with human military contracts. Communication intercepts proved that the same people had been feeding false intelligence to both armies. Dr. Wells made another crucial discovery. The children's natural telepathic abilities allowed them to share memories and images much more clearly than adult aliens could. Through careful work with little Kess, Dara, and Vex, she was able to document actual conversations between the weapons dealers and alien leaders. "This is enough evidence to stop the war," Dr. Wells announced during a meeting with military leadership. "But we need to get this information to both armies simultaneously." That's when Zara proposed something unprecedented. Using her access codes as a high commander, she could broadcast a message to the entire alien fleet. But she would need human cooperation to reach their forces at the same time. Colonel Hayes was skeptical. "How do we know this isn't an elaborate trick?" David stood up, his 3 alien children staying close to his sides. "Because families don't lie to each other." The plan they developed was risky but necessary. David and Zara would work together to create a joint broadcast, sharing the evidence with both human and alien forces simultaneously. The children would help translate and provide emotional testimony about the cost of the manipulated war. On the day of the broadcast, David felt nervous but determined. He looked at Zara, who had become not just an ally but truly family. Her children had accepted him completely, and he had learned to see the universe through their innocent eyes. The broadcast went out across both fleets simultaneously. Human and alien soldiers saw the same evidence, heard the same testimony, and learned the same terrible truth. They had been fighting each other while the real enemies profited from their suffering. The response was immediate. Ceasefire orders came from both commands, as leaders on each side realized they had been manipulated. The weapons dealers were exposed and arrested on multiple worlds. But the most important change happened in the hearts of individual soldiers and aliens who saw David's family standing together during the broadcast. If a human soldier and an alien mother could overcome their differences for the sake of children, maybe there was hope for lasting peace. 6 months later, David stood in the garden of a new settlement where humans and aliens were learning to live together. Little Kes played with human children, teaching them to sing in harmonious tones. Dara showed human engineers how alien technology worked, fostering innovations that benefited both species. Vex had appointed himself protector of all the children in the settlement, regardless of species. Zara worked alongside David as co-leaders of the community, their different strengths complementing each other perfectly. The warrior mother and the protective soldier had become partners in building something neither species could have achieved alone. The war was over, but the peace they were building was stronger than any treaty. It was founded on the simple truth that love and protection of the innocent transcends all boundaries. David often thought about that first day when he heard crying sounds from under the rubble. His decision to save 3 small aliens had not only changed his life, but had ultimately saved both civilizations from destroying each other. Sometimes, the smallest acts of compassion create the biggest changes in the universe, and sometimes families are formed in the most unexpected ways.